Hi, welcome to another episode of Luncheonette with Laura Diaz. That's me, and I'm very excited to bring another great informative interview to you today. We're going to be talking to Bart Armstrong, and the topic is how to navigate the system and working with Children's Legal Services. So again, something that I think foster parents across the state are really going to benefit from his particular unique angle. So first, I've got a couple of announcements I wanted to go over. I'm so excited. I don't know if you can tell, but this week coming up is the State Foster Adoptive Parent Association Education Conference in Orlando, and I'm going to be there. We're going to be doing a QPI workshop, but in addition, we're going to be trying to capture as much information and video some workshops so we can post them on our website so you can see them, those of you who can't make it in person, or those of you who even can't make every single workshop, because there are so many great ones to choose from. So stay tuned and watch our website, and we're going to be posting those as soon as possible. Also, another great conference around the corner by Daniel Kids, and it's going to be the Independent Living Conference. It is the 26th annual national one, and it's called Growing Pains. It's August 27th through 30th. We're going to post their website right here so you can click on it and take a look and get more information about that conference. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Bart Armstrong. Hey, Bart.
Hello, how are you?
Great. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and your story and how you have this, unique perspective of working with CLS and navigating the system?
Sure. Yeah. So about 2 years ago, I decided that I wanted to adopt another child. We have one son that we adopted from Guatemala about 5 years ago. And so we began the MAP course process here in Miami-Dade County to become foster parents. We figured that we would foster and then ultimately wanted to adopt. And so we went through that course, and then towards the end of that course, or right after that course completed, we learned of a little boy here in Miami-Dade County. He was about 3 years old at the time and had been living in a shelter for quite some time. Had gone through the system, his parents' rights had been terminated, and they had a disruption in placement for him and was at a shelter. And so growing up in Miami-Dade County, knew a lot of people here. My spouse actually works in dependency court as well. We went to court and we got an order. We went and met our son, whose name is Jack, and fell in love instantly. And actually, originally, he first came home to us as a non-relative placement because we hadn't actually finished the tail end of the fostering license. And so through that process and through the fostering process and the adoption process, I touched base with Mary Cagle, who was the director here in Miami, who I had known for many years because we were state attorneys together, and I learned that there was this position of the Southern Regional Director for Children's Legal Services was open and had been open for some time. And so just kind of as I navigated my way through the foster process and then ultimately the adoption process, I was simultaneously going on interviews for the job as regional director, and ultimately got the job as regional director, and 2 weeks later finalized the adoptions of our son Jack. And
wow, that's fantastic.
The experience that I kind of bring to this is that when I talk to foster parents, I really, truly understand their process, the frustrations, the system inside and out. Having gone through it, I still have a foster license now. In fact, just had one of my follow-up routine home studies yesterday with my agency. And so, I really kind of bring that perspective to it. And so one of the things I did when I first got to CLS almost immediately was informing my attorneys how important foster parents are. And I say it twofold. They're important to me, one, because they're my greatest witness. Like when I was a prosecutor, I would call officers to my cases. Foster parents are your greatest witnesses because they're the ones that really know every single detail about the child, because they're the ones that are with the child all through the night, all through the days. And so I immediately started telling my attorneys, you need to reach out to foster parents. You need to talk to them. You need to communicate with them. They need to have your phone number. You need to make sure you can address any concerns they have. They should really feel that relationship with you, the CLS attorney, and them is just a completely open relationship, because at the end of the day, the one thing that we have in common with foster parents as attorneys is that we're all here for the kids. That's our main goal. And so as that was happening, the whole transition thing really started to ramp up with all the regional directors and Mary Cagle in the state. And so to date, here in the 11th and throughout most of the state, all of our attorneys have reached out to all of their foster parents. Some have sent letters with their contact information. Some have called them on their phone. And one of the things we're doing here that I think is really interesting and hopefully will roll out around the state is we're developing an email that's going to go out to foster parents where they can answer questions. And so if they can't make it to court or something comes up, they'll be able to email us back questions about the child's education, medication, how they're doing, activities, any special honors in school, just information that the attorneys can really have so that they can make sure the court is made aware. And so that's really just been kind of my focus, is bridging that gap between the attorneys in CLS and the foster parents. And so that's kind of my backstory of how I ended up in dependency. I didn't really have a history in dependency until I began the adoption process with Jack.
Wow, that's fantastic. So what would you say, during that process, kind of looking at it from the back end first, what would you say was the biggest challenge that you saw for foster parents when you were starting in that process?
I think the biggest challenge, and I know it was for me, even though my spouse worked in dependency, was getting information. It was very hard to get all the information that we need. And I remember specific things like when Jack first came home, we wanted to put him in a private daycare that our other son went to, but we didn't have the blue and yellow medical forms that you need to be in daycare. And so it was tough because you've got to get with the agency. We had to find the forms. We had to take Jack to our doctor. He had a Medicaid card. We had to get the Medicaid card. And so that's really, I think, the struggle. And I think it's a system-wide struggle. It's just, you need all this information to do the right thing for the children, and you're trying to get all the information. And so that for us was a struggle.
What would you recommend to foster parents, especially let's say some of the newer foster parents, and they're just jumping in, they're getting started, they have their first court appearance coming up, kind of navigating the system and communicating with all the parties related to the case. Kind of what's the advice that you would give them?
Yeah, the one thing I would definitely give them is to reach out to the CLS attorney, because the CLS attorney in every case is always going to be that one person that's in contact with the case managers, the judges, other attorneys, the government. That's going to be that one person that's always in contact. So with the CLS attorney, they can relay that information. And I also think that what foster parents really need to do is they need to speak up. Don't be afraid to address concerns. There's ways you can do it. I talk to foster parents on almost a daily basis. And, just get the word out there. Let people know what's going on. Because there is a big shift happening in the state, especially with the case management agencies and that relationship, and starting to understand that the foster parents are going to be more involved, and they are going to go to court, and they are going to reach out to the CLS attorneys. And so I think doing that as you first step your foot in the door will really help you build the relationships as you grow as a foster parent or ultimately become an adoptive parent.
Okay, great. That's great information. We had a couple questions come in, and I'd like to take a moment and thank our viewers that respond to our requests for questions and comments, either emailing those to us or on our Facebook page. So we'll post that information again at the end. But we did, Bart, have a couple questions come in, and I'd like to share those with you and see if you can address them and maybe give these viewers some more advice on their questions. The first one that came in says, what can be done if you feel your family services counselor is not adequately representing the best interest of the dependent child and is only considering the wants of the parent? So much so that the case plan provides inaccurate data to make the parent look more favorable in the eyes of the court.
I think the best thing for a foster parent in that scenario to do is to ask for a staffing. To ask to set up a staffing with all the parties involved. You can contact the CLS attorney. I had a foster parent contact me on Monday about somewhat of a similar issue, and we all sat down. We did it on conference call because they're in the Keys, but we all sat down and we staffed the case, and we kind of laid out what the concerns were, the best way to get over those concerns, And I just think that's the best way to do it. I think that you've got to bring everybody to the table. I always, start my conversations with, I'm here for the children. That's my only concern. And so I want to just kind of be open and let's all just really talk about it. And I think you will have scenarios where as you flush things out, they don't, sometimes they don't always appear to be what they seem. And so I just think that open communication and that constant desire to work together really in the end will get you a very positive outcome.
I couldn't agree more. Would you say they should contact their case manager at first to see if the case manager would set up the staffing, or would you say to contact the CLS attorney?
I think they can do it either way. I always encourage everybody to contact my staff, my CLS attorneys, because they're able to coordinate with all the parties and they'll know who needs to be there. And again, I go back to because the foster parent is so valuable as a resource and a witness and everything to the CLS attorney. They should all, I recommend that they go to the CLS attorney and they can talk to the case manager and see if that's an avenue. But the CLS attorneys, they're around the state now, know the importance of the foster parents and are working on that communication. So I think the CLS attorney is what I would do.
Okay, fantastic. Another question that came in says, why if children are provided 9 months to permanency, does it always take longer than 12 months to file a petition for TPR?
So that's a unique question. I think it's very case specific. It's obviously known that we do have cases that go on for more than 12 months. Oftentimes you put families on a case plan, they're working on their case plan, additional services are recommended, and so unfortunately it takes you outside of the 12-month range, and then you realize that it's not going to work and the parents really aren't going to be successful. I would hope around the state that that's not the norm and that's the exception. And I can tell you that one thing we've been doing at CLS is, and it's part of our review process, is we pull random samples of cases that are outside of 12 months, and we staff them during our reviews with all the leaders in the state and CLS to kind of explore why that's happening. And in certain areas, and definitely here in Miami, my managing attorney actually staffs all of the cases that are outside of 12 months with the attorneys to kind of figure out, why is that happening? What's really going on here? And I know, like in Broward, for example, we met with them recently because they actually attack cases even before the 12-month mark to kind of see how it's going, what's working, what's not. So there are times that it happens. I think it's important for the foster parents when you're getting close to that 9, 10, 11-month mark to reach out to the CLS attorney and to talk to them and to say, this is kind of what's been going on. I just want to make sure you're aware. What is permanency going to look like here? And it's definitely something that we're working on daily.
Okay, all right, that's great. Definitely like that team effort on, expediting the process. Okay, we have another question from a viewer that came in, and it says, thank you for the videos. Very interesting and helpful and much appreciated. Well, you are welcome. We're thrilled to do them for you. I would love to view one on when foster parent does not feel safe and agree with reunification. This would be a great one. I am currently the 5th foster parent for a 5-year-old whose mother seems to walk on water via case manager, therapist, and guardian ad litem. My question is, when is enough enough? So I think it's a little bit related to our first question, but you can see the passion in this viewer's her question, Bart. So how would you respond to that one?
I tend to agree, and I do hear the passion, and I kind of draw back to my own story with my son Jack, who spent such a long time in a shelter, because he was your prime example. He had a foster placement that fell through. He had some attachment issues. They put him in the shelter. They were looking for a placement. And I don't place blame on anybody for how it played out. But I think, had the CLS attorneys and the first set of foster parents had a stronger relationship, we might have been able to track his case. And I keep going back to that. I mean, the foster parents, they need to bring those concerns to the CLS attorney. Everybody needs to really sit down at the table and kind of flush everything out. And I think that when you do that and everybody's there and everybody's able to say, okay, this is what we see is happening, what's the solution? Or this is what we feel is going to end up happening, how can we work through it? I think you're really able to work through it. And I think that's why the foster parents are so important in pushing our cases through the system and kind of knowing everything that's going on. And it's a lot of it is a case by case basis, and there are some cases that are handled differently than others. And that's why although I am a regional director, I'm very involved in the cases here in Miami. I staff cases on a daily basis. I received a call at 4 o'clock this morning on a case where we had to have an emergency staffing. So, that's my approach, because I really, really am passionate. But I really just think it's getting involved, getting things escalated to the appropriate people at the table, and just going in with that positive attitude that at the end of the day, what can all come of this is doing great things for these children.
Well, I think that's a good point, is bringing up the positive attitude and the right attitude, and that's going to the table, getting everybody there and making sure that they see that, this child's best interests is what we're here for, and we're here to advocate for them, and we should, all get together and work as a team. So absolutely great advice there. So Bart, when we were talking earlier, and you were talking about, your role, in the dependency court, and also, going through the foster parenting classes. What would you say is the one thing that you through the training process that you maybe didn't get, that you wish you had gotten, and you want to make sure that foster parents really get from that?
I didn't feel when I went through my MAP course, which was back then. I knew a lot about the court process because I've been an attorney for so many years. I've worked my whole career has been in government work, but I didn't feel like they touched a lot on the court process. And I felt like, I found myself answering a lot of questions for the foster parents that were in the group with me that did the MAP course. And so I think that that's something we've all been striving to do, is so the foster parents really can understand what their access is, what their ability is, who they can contact. And one of the things that we do in several areas in the state and also down here is we have our CLS attorneys go to the Pride graduation the last night and pass out their business cards and tell them, we are CLS, this is who we are, this is what we do, and here's our phone number. And so that part of it, I think is something that should definitely be included, and I think is being included more and more in the process, is just kind of understanding how this whole system works from a foster parent's point of view.
What would you recommend to the foster parent who is supervising the visitation? They're working, in great cooperation with everybody, but they're seeing some concerns with the biological parent. They're having some struggles in communicating with that biological parent. What's your advice for them?
I think that they should try to have that conversation to some extent with the biological parent if they're supervising the visits. One of the things that I've noticed in talking to both sides, referring to foster parents versus biological parents, is, I think sometimes, I think more often than not, biological parents are intimidated by foster parents, and they see their role as, you're taking my children. And really what the role is, and what I try to tell my bio parents when I see them is, they're going to help you. They're going to help you with this child. They're going to help you with this situation. They're going to help you get through this rough time in your life, and so that you can be a better parent and be, a better person. And so I definitely think that they should have that talk with the bio parent. But, again, if they're not seeing the results and the concerns remain, they should escalate it. And that's conversations you would have with the case manager, maybe you would have with the therapist if they're on the case, definitely have with the CLS attorney, and kind of work through that. But I do think that it's hard on foster parents because biological parents can be very intimidated by us and the role that they perceive that we're playing in the lives of their children, and not really understanding that we're here to make them better parents and to get them reunified with their children. And so it's a balance.
What are you guys doing down there on the front end to kind of introduce everybody? Do you have like an early on staffing when the case is first staffed, or the case plan is first created, where you're introducing the family and all the team players together?
Yeah, one of the things that we're working on is as part of the transition. So I'll just talk very briefly so I can put it into my context. So part of the transition is we're putting teams together of all the local players, foster parents, and having these transition committees led by one of our judges down here, Judge Figueroa, and we're doing that around the state. And one of the things that I've asked that we do, and we're still talking about it, and I believe it's going to happen, is I want the foster parents to come to that initial case plan conference. And I want them to sit there with everybody at the table, including the biological parents, when we discuss the case plan. Because I think that that's the ideal time to not only talk about how this child's going to transition back to their parents at some point if reunification is the goal, but I think that that's the time for the biological parents to be able to have a conversation with the foster parents and say, ask the foster parents different things and tell the foster parents about the kids. And I think if you come if you come to the table in the very beginning and everybody's there talking about it and they're open about it, I think it'll make it a smoother process, because I think the intimidation won't be there so much, because the foster parents and the biological parents will feel more comfortable having that open line of communication. And quite frankly, the only way the transition can work is to do that, because in the end, if the goal is reunification and the child does return home, you need that relationship to do the transitioning. And so I hope that ultimately happens around the state, because I really think that that's a great way to go in kind of breaking that uncomfortable barrier between the foster parents and the bio parents.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with your comments today, because it really is, again, like right up front, I think setting the groundwork to say, we're all working together as a team towards this goal, and here's all the players, and here's how we're going to work together, so it doesn't seem like the foster parent is out there with their own agenda. They're part of that same primary goal. So I think that's fantastic. I think you guys are doing some great work down there. Can you tell us a little bit more about, you've talked about transitions, but it's been a big QPI objective here to work on transitions across the state. I'm really excited about it, and I'm just so happy to hear a lot of the work you're doing down there. Can you kind of give our viewers some idea of how you've implemented some of the changes with the transition work? And I'm talking about not just a transition to a reunification, but even sometimes when you've got a relative or when you've got a foster parent to another foster parent, and how you see that going.
It's actually going very well. We laid out a strategic plan here at CLS. All the regional directors and Mary Cagle were on board with it. We kind of had certain things. We had certain videos we needed to watch. We had each attorney reach out to every foster parent on their particular case. We put together a phenomenal transition team, both here and in every region. I mean, I've seen the actual teams be putting together in every region. We're having our first, I believe the first CLS transition actual meeting that's going to take place will be in Miami, and I think there's one to follow in Tampa, where everybody's going to come to the table with the judges, like I said, and everybody to talk about it. And we've had some good stories. I mean, we really have. We are seeing now that I think everybody's understanding the impact that the transitions have on the children. And I think, I go back to the story of a young man I met in Orlando who had the train set and never went back home. And I talked to him all these years later, and he still remembers the train set that he never got to go back and get. And so I think for the first time, people are really understanding the transition and the effect that it has on the child, and how important it is for the child, for the family, and for all the other siblings that may be in the house that the child's not going to go back to. And our judges have really embraced it. I mean, in every region, there's been a main judge who's kind of really taken on the cause. And for what I can tell from talking to people, this is really the first time that this has been a forefront issue. And this, coupled with the Quality Parenting Initiative, really something that everybody seems dedicated to making sure it gets done, and gets done now, not later, and gets done, the right way. And so we've had some really cool stories. I can't remember all the specific cases, but I think, we had a case where a young man was transitioning from a foster parent to, I think, like a relative that was going to adopt. And it was just a nice story. And they kind of met and they spoke to each other, and it went over a couple of weeks, and he was able to go to an event he had with the foster parent before the transition was finalized. So that's been really, really cool to watch.
That's fantastic. And for those of you who did not know, we have the video clip of that young man talking about his train set. We'll post the link here so you can take a look at it, because it is so touching, and it is truly the inspiration of the work that we're doing here at QPI to to just understand some of these challenges and work together with people like Bart and CLS and Mary Cagle and find out these issues and work on making them better for the kids in care. So we're about out of time now, Bart. I wanted to see, do you have any, closing comments or suggestions or anything you'd like to share with the foster parents who are watching across the state?
Yeah, I would just share with you, first and foremost, how amazing you are as individuals. Being a foster parent, I know the struggles that we all go through, and I think it's amazing. It's an amazing thing that everybody does. And just to really know that CLS is here for you and that we can be reached and, you can call us and we will talk to you, and that we are working really hard at Children's Legal Services to have that strong relationship with all the foster parents in all of our cases.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Bart. You have been a wonderful guest and given us just awesome information, and I hope that you all out there will benefit from this and will just understand how awesome it is to have the opportunity to work with partners like our CLS attorneys, and that we're all part of the team for these children together. So thank you again. And guys, I want to remind you that we are here to take your questions, your topic suggestions, anything that you might want to share with us, and we love to hear your great stories. So don't forget, you can email us. We're going to post the link here, or you can, of course, go on our Facebook page anytime. So thanks again for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you on another episode of Luncheonette with Laura Diaz.